Good morning and welcome to Daily Devotions with Pastor Joe. I'm Pastor Joe, and for this morning's devotional, we're looking back to the life of Elisha once again in the story of Naaman being healed of his leprosy. Right at the start, I'd like to encourage you to like, comment, subscribe, and share this video with a friend if you have anyone who you think would be interested in this kind of biblical content. 2 Kings chapter 5, starting with verse 1. And we're only going into Naaman, not into what Gehazi does afterwards, just the healing of Naaman. 2 Kings 5:1 says, Now Naaman, captain of the host of the king of Syria, was a great man with his master, and honourable, because by him the Lord had given deliverance unto Syria. He was also a mighty man in valour, but he was a leper. And the Syrians had gone out by companies, and had brought away captive out of the land of Israel a little maid, and she waited on Naaman's wife. And she said unto her mistress, Would God my Lord were that with the prophet that is in Samaria, for he would recover him of his leprosy. And one went in and told his Lord, saying, Thus and thus said the maid that is of the land of Israel. Verse 5 says, And the king of Syria said, Go, and I will send a letter unto the king of Israel. And he departed and took with him 10 talents of silver, and 6,000 pieces of gold, and 10 changes of raiment. And he brought the letter to the king of Israel, saying, Now when this letter is come up unto thee, behold, I have therewith sent Naaman my servant to thee, that thou mayest recover him of his leprosy. And it came to pass, when the king of Israel had read the letter, that he rent his clothes, and said, Am I God, to kill and to make alive, that this man doth send unto me to recover a man of his leprosy? Wherefore consider, I pray you, and see how he seeketh a quarrel against me. And it was so, when Elisha, the man of God, had heard that the king of Israel had rent his clothes, that he sent to the king, saying, Wherefore hast thou rent thy clothes? Let him come now to me, and he shall know that there is a prophet in Israel. So Naaman came with his horses and with his chariot, and stood at the door of the house of Elisha. And Elisha sent a messenger unto him, saying, Go and wash in Jordan 7 times, and thy flesh shall come to thee again to thee, and thou shalt be clean. But Naaman was wroth, and went away, and said, Behold, I thought he will surely come out to me, and stand and call on the name of the Lord his God, and strike his hands over the place, and recover the leper. Are not Abana and Pharpar, rivers of Damascus, better than all the waters of Israel? May I not wash in them and be clean? So he turned and went away in a rage. And his servants came near and spake unto him, and said, My father, if the prophet had bid thee do some great thing, wouldst thou not have done it? How much rather then, when he saith to thee, Wash and be clean? Then went he down, and dipped himself 7 times in Jordan, according to the saying of the man of God, and his flesh came again like unto the flesh of a little child, and he was clean. And this is an awesome story, and we'll talk about Gehazi later, but this is an awesome story of one of the miracles performed under the guidance of Elisha, by the power of God, obviously, not by any power that Elisha had in and of himself. So Naaman is a Syrian, and they had an Israelitess, a Jewess, for a little maid, and he was a very mighty man who was honourable and very mighty of valour, and he was a leper. Well, this lady knew about Elisha at the time and said, Oh, I wish he knew. I wish we had our prophet here, because our prophet who's in Samaria, he would be able to heal the leprosy. So they talked to the king of Syria, and the king of Syria, wanting to save his servant, sent a letter with 10 changes of clothes, 10 talents of silver, 6,000 pieces of gold. That's a lot of gold. And sent him to the king of Israel for a healing. The king said, Oh, well, he's not coming to me for a healing. I can't heal him. I'm not God. I can't make him alive or dead. And he's just seeking a quarrel against me. And that's not really the case. He's not trying to seek for a reason to start a war with Israel, although that would be a pretty good reason to start a war if you sent your number one man for healing to Israel, and Israel had promised to be a healing nation, and yet it wasn't able to. Yeah, you could start a war, but he didn't. He wasn't there for that. So then he sent him. Elisha, the man of God, heard that the king had rent his clothes, so word traveled quickly, and who knows how long Naaman was in the king's castle, and he heard that the king had rent his clothes. He sent a servant to the king, saying, "Why did you do this? Let him come to me, and he will know that there is a prophet in Israel." So Naaman came with horses, with his chariot, and stood at the door of the house. And then Elisha doesn't even bother to come out to Naaman. Naaman's not that important. He's trying to teach Naaman perhaps a humbling thing. God is trying to teach Naaman something of humility, of humbling himself in this instance. He sends out his servant, most likely Gehazi, and his servant goes and says, "Well, Elisha told me to tell you to go down to that muddy, dirty, stinky Jordan River that you don't like because it's not anywhere near as great as your rivers. He said, go down to the Jordan River and take a bath in it 7 times. When you come out, you will be clean." Seems like an interesting statement. But Naaman is upset. He's wroth, the Bible says, and he goes away in a rage because he's so upset. First of all, he came to the king. That wasn't the right place. Now he's traveled all the way over here to see Elisha. Elisha won't even come out to see him. He sends his lowly servant out. And then, instead of giving him a healing, he sends him to the dirtiest river in the area to go take a bath to get clean. And he says, I thought he will come out to me, stand, call on the name of his God, strike his hand over the place, and recover it. He'll heal my body because he'll do this mystical chant and call out to his God and strike his hands together and put his hands over the place and they'll be healed. Sounds like some things we see nowadays among some of the groups out there. But he says, this is what I would have had him do. Aren't these other 2 rivers in Damascus, cleaner than all the waters of Israel? Obviously showing his preference for being back home. He says, I don't want to do this. I'm going to go home and wash in one of those rivers. I don't give a care. This is ridiculous. Goes away in a rage. But one of his servants was more sensible than that. One of his servants said, if he would have asked you to do some great thing, and in my imagination he's probably thinking something like go out and kill 30 of Israel's enemies for him, or go out and find this special object, or pick these particular plants so that he can make an herbal tea for him, basically. Some crazy great thing. He would have told you to do something great and mystical. You would have done it, right? Well then, all he said was wash and be clean. So why not give it a shot? And then he goes and he says, fine, I'll do it. He dips himself 7 times. And I can imagine each time Naaman drops in the water, splashes off the water, looks at himself, says, that's 1, folks. Ain't nothing cleaner. Drops in again, splashes out, says, well, there's 2. All the way on up. And the 6th time he's probably looking at himself and thinking, man, the leprosy's not gone. It's not going anywhere. Every time I dip in, it should be getting cleaner, right? But you know what? I'll do it. I'll go the 7th time. He dips in the 7th time. He comes out and his flesh is completely renewed. His skin is completely new. It says like a child's skin. He was completely clean and his skin was renewed. So he's no longer rough, tough, and broken and beat up on it in his skin like my hands unfortunately are with all of their scars. But he's fresh, clean, and like new. The leprosy's gone. So what do we see here? We see, first of all, that Naaman needed some serious humility in this lesson. He was, such a mighty host, a mighty man of the host of the armies of Syria, and he was one of the important ones, right? He was this special guy who was very highly cared for in their military, and he thought there was something special about him. And, well, in a way, he had some physical advantages, but they were given to him by God, and God wanted to humble him here. And so he was very not humble. He was not humble at all. God gave him leprosy perhaps to begin the humbling process, then gave him a little girl from Israel, from his enemies, to tell him where he ought to go to get healing, and then took him on a long roundabout journey to a king who said, I'm not the one able to heal you, all the way out to the prophet who said, I'm not coming out to talk to him, to the servant of the prophet of Israel who told him to go take a bath 7 times to get clean. He needed some serious humbling. And so here throughout this story, we're seeing it over and over again that God is working in Naaman's life to try and bring him to a point of humility where he understands, sometimes it's not all about you. Sometimes that the healing or the answer or the miracle might come from a very peculiar place. I remember one story, and I don't remember who told it, but it was one of the evangelists of a young man who was out on the streets. He was homeless, and he would come to church and he would pray. And there was an atheist who liked to attend that church too, just to have things to argue about. And this man, this poor man, he'd come and he was praying that God would provide him food. The atheist comes up to him and says, what in the world are you doing? Why don't you go out and get some food? He tells him, of course, he's not able to. He's got a lot of reasons behind it, and he says, I'm trusting in God to provide food for me today. Well, the man thinks he's pretty smart. So he goes out and he gets some food, comes back, puts it down in front of him and says, there, God didn't give it to you, I did. And the man says, well, God can use sinners too. God can use some pretty mysterious ways to make things happen. So dipping in the Jordan River 7 times, nowadays, because of this story, we would totally say, yeah, absolutely, I would love to do that. If I needed a healing and I was told to dip in the river, I'd be right there, right? But back then, of course, nothing like this had ever happened, so that was absolutely far-fetched, out there, insane, couldn't happen. So if God asks you to do something that's a little bit strange or humbling or whatever it may be in your life, listen to him, because you have no idea what kind of a blessing is going to come out of that for you or for another person along the way. Do whatever it is God has called for you to do, even if it's the strangest, most peculiar thing that he's ever asked you to do it. So Naaman was cured of his leprosy on the 7th dip. And we're going to read in a little further that he comes back and he's absolutely ecstatic. He's thrilled. He wants to do something great for the prophet. But, of course, that goes downhill quickly. So, once again, just Elisha, Gehazi, Naaman. These are the 3 most important characters in this part in this history of the Bible. Of course, the king of Syria. I don't remember if it's said. It just says the king of Syria in verse 5, so it doesn't even have his name at the time. And then there's the king of Israel. Once again, it doesn't name which king is in place at this particular time, though I'm sure we could find it fairly easily. And so, if you're out there and you think yourself too much to do some of the lowly jobs or some of the small things or some of the things that might not be as awesome and as luxurious as others get to do, look to Naaman and find that he did something pretty humbling, and God gave him a mighty blessing through it. God called him to do this thing. He did it, and because of his stepping out and taking the initiative in the faith and hoping for the healing, I'm sure on that 7th time he was like, oh, please, please, please be healed. He was hoping. Because of doing those things, he ended up receiving the healing that he was asking for. So, if you have any comments, remember, comment section down below. Like, comment, subscribe, share this video with a friend, and have an excellent day in the Lord. God bless. See you later on another Daily Devotions with Pastor Joe.